friends, mornings like this are a special time in the history of the profession, one that does tend to remind you of the morning when you yourself took the oath and received the paraphernalia and accoutrements that come with getting to be a lawyer. And last week I heard somebody talk about the way people feel on a morning like this. I hope you'll leave the hall feeling the way Judge Harker urged us all to feel, uplifted by the prospects of what might happen, of what we might make happen as judges and lawyers, servants of our fellow human beings. I've recently thought about how people approach this moment as young lawyers, by virtue of having spent a fair number of hours over the last month interviewing law clerk applicants. And among the things I ask people are, how'd you end up where you are? What led you to choose this? If they came from out of state, how'd you find your way to Indiana? What's part of law school do you think is the most valuable to you? And what do you think you want to do as a lawyer? And two of the recent answers stuck in my mind. One was a young man from southern Indiana who said, I've looked around and I've decided I want to be in the mix. That's the way he put it. I want to be in the mix. And the other was a young woman from here in Indianapolis who said, when I asked her what she thought she wanted to do with being a lawyer, and she said, well, I sort of lean towards so I looked around and I think I can probably be most valuable and most satisfied somewhere in the public sector. And she described that by saying, I'd like to be in the arena. Now, I don't know whether she had ever heard of Teddy Roosevelt's speech, but she had by the time she got out of my office. God bless the internet. I turned around and brought Google up on the screen, put in Teddy Roosevelt, man in the arena, and printed it out. So here you are. But I had special reason to think about that sort of aspiration within the last week. Reading about the passing due to breast cancer of a remarkable lawyer named Deborah Hepler. She was a law clerk in the United States District Court for a while. She was incredibly active in the field of domestic violence. She was a lawyer for a period of time at Creek Duval, Locke Reynolds, you're right. And at the time she died, leaving a son and daughter and a husband, she was general counsel of the Housing and Community Development Authority of the state of Indiana, and she was engaged in trying to figure out ways to help people not lose their houses as a result of the great financial crisis. Last year, imagine this, there were more foreclosures filed in Indiana courts than there were divorces. And the Housing and Community Development Authority's mission, among other things, is to try to make housing available for decent, safe, and sanitary, as the old federal phrase, federal statutory phrase goes, to find decent, safe, and sanitary housing, to raise the level of home ownership in the country, to give people a feeling of commitment to the neighborhoods where they live, and to help people farther down in the economic ladder have a chance to own that part of the American dream, and how not to lose it. And That's how she was engaged in the last year or longer of her life. I'll actually remember her for another reason. She was the creator of a thing called the Protective Order Pro Bono Project of Indianapolis. I always thought it was an act of genius. She did this she had lots of allies eventually, but she did it just by sheer force of personality, just insisted that this was going to happen. And she wasn't going to let go of it until it did. And her idea was that that the victims in protective order situations, one of the leading tools we have to try to, the only one, but it's the one that the court system has to try to protect mostly women, not entirely, from abusive boyfriends or abusive ex-husbands or abusive husbands. And one of the great ironies of this arrangement is that if you are the respondent of you're the potential abuser, and somebody brings a protective order charge against you, you actually, if you're indigent, actually have a right to a lawyer at public expense. One of my oldest friends called me one day, active in women's affairs. She called and said, "Is it right that you guys," meaning me, "is it right that you guys give lawyers to the abusers and not to the abused?" And I said, "I can explain it to you, but I can't defend it to you." And Deb Hepler thought that there was something she could do about that, and what she could do was to recruit people who work as volunteers to help hold the hand of the people who were potentially to be abused as they went into court to seek protective orders. And she had an incredible theory on how she was going to do that. Now she recruited people from the law generally, but she figured out that one of the things you could do would be to look for law students who might want to actually go to court as law students, something I never did. And so she would. I had this mental image of Deb going out into a law school and saying, I'll put up a sign, law students who'd like a chance to go to court early, sign up here, cause fighting abusers. Well, you practically have to step to one side to keep the crush of people from coming forward. But you give me a chance to go to court, and you're going to give me a chance to do it against domestic abusers. My goodness, where do I sign? And Deb Hepler figured that out. And every once in a while, there'd be a gathering of the Klan, people who'd given their time, and she'd occasionally ask me to go and thank all of them, hand out certificates, the sort of thing you do, in modest little ways. We say thank you to each other for time donated for good causes. And that cause lives today. The enterprise that she created became institutionalized eventually. The various elements of the court system, including the Indiana Supreme Court, support it, as do various elements of the nonprofit sector, foundations and charities. And something has happened because she decided to use her own genius and her energy to make it happen. She did. In many respects, you will all recognize the legend. Give me a lever that's long enough and a place to stand, and I will move the earth. And she did that. People who are safer, people who are living who wouldn't be living. But for her determination to use her talent and insight into making it happen. She died 10 days ago, and 15 years ago this morning, I realize now, I granted the motion to admit her and others to the bar of our state. And my hope is, my aspiration for all of us is, that however long we have, people will on that day say, you moved the world. Just a little. You'll have a chance to do that any second. I'll call on this free